Welcome to Motorcycle Insider. My name is Tristan, and this is your destination for information from inside the powersports industry. Today's machine was provided by Seminole Powersports in Sanford, Florida. SPS has been in business since 1982, and they have everything that you need to get started on your next adventure. Call or stop by today to get started. Today's machine is the 2019 Husqvarna Vitpilen 401. The 401 Vitpilen was released alongside a 701 Vitpilen, which features the engine from the KTM Duke 690, as well as the 690 SMCR and the Husqvarna 701 Supermoto and Enduro. This engine is shared among all of those bikes, and the 401 is kind of the same concept, but this engine is from the Duke 390. Simple, progressive. That's Husqvarna's inspiration for the Vitpilen. Both of those things are translated very well through the styling cues of the Vitpilen. You can see that there's nothing unnecessary, nothing extra, nothing over the top. It's just a cafe-style motorcycle. Although the shape of the Vitpilen is very retro, it also exudes a lot of very modern energy. If you go to the front, you'll see an LED headlight, and to the rear an LED taillight. If you examine the midroof of the bike a little more closely, you'll see a modern chromoly trellis frame. The Vitpilen 401 produces 44 horsepower and 28 foot-pounds of torque, which isn't a lot, especially by today's standards, but in a 326-pound machine with such a short wheelbase, it is a very flickable and agile bike. The wheelbase of this machine is so short that you actually feel like you're almost directly over the front tire. The rear seems like you're almost sitting right on top of it.
Which is a good thing. With such an unobstructed, commanding view of the road, and your head being directly over the steering head, turn-in is extremely direct, and you feel as if you have ultimate control over the bike. And now, to test that ultimate control, we'll take it out on the road and see how it rides. Then, I'll be scoring the Vitpilen in 10 different categories, and we'll see where it ranks.
Alrighty, y'all, we're going to take a quick ride up to the shop, because I'm stupid and I left something there that I need for the video. So, get some quick riding footage on the old Vitpilen 401.
After making my way back home, I wanted to test the maximum lean angle of the Vitpilen, and here in Florida, there's not very many roads near me where I can do that, so here's a clip of me cutting around a cul-de-sac at about 20 miles an hour. The amount of lean angle here is about a millimeter off of the peg scraping. You can hear at one point my foot touches the ground, but to save my shoes, I decided not to drag them the entire time, so I backed off just a hair. The Vitpilen 401 is powered by a modern 373 cubic centimeter single overhead cam, single cylinder, 4-valve engine that is remarkably compact. With 28 foot-pounds of torque from down low in the RPM range and a 6-speed gearbox, it's perfect for urban riding. The electronic fuel injection is operated by a ride-by-wire system that delivers a sharp but refined power. With a peak of 44 horsepower, its lightweight construction means that the power-to-weight ratio will also excite more experienced riders. The 401 is fitted with hydraulic bi-brick disc brakes, which stands for bi-Brembo, which are manufactured to the highest standards, and in combination with a 320mm front and 230mm rear perforated steel discs, deliver controllable and confident braking performance. The Vitpilen is also fitted with a state-of-the-art Bosch 9M Plus ABS system, ensuring the highest level of safety in varying braking conditions. This function can also be fully disengaged for more advanced riders. Another note on the bi-Brembo brakes, just know that this is not Brembo's cheap division, it's just their division for light and middleweight motorcycles. The suspension, produced by WP Performance Systems, is made to exact standards, ensuring the highest level of quality and craftsmanship. The front suspension features 43mm open cartridge forks, while the rear features a progressive damping system connected directly to the swing arm. These high-quality components offer dynamic handling optimal for challenging urban environments. The ride-by-wire throttle, handled by the Bosch EMS, is crisp and responsive. The brake lever is adjustable, as well as the clutch lever. The clutch is a PASC anti-hopping clutch that's mechanically operated. This allows for more aggressive downshifts without locking of the rear wheel, as well as a light and easy pull. The exhaust note isn't whiny or annoying like you'd expect from a small displacement single cylinder, though it could benefit from a slip-on exhaust. It does sound like a performance engine. Now, while the Vitpilen 401 is a smaller displacement, lightweight bike, it may be intimidating for some beginner riders. If you've had little to no riding experience, the aggressive seating position could make you feel a little uneasy while you're on the road. The turn-in is very quick. While this is good for the sake of agility, if you're not confident and deliberate in your movements, you might find it a little bit unnerving. Now, with that being said, more seasoned riders will appreciate the agile, light handling feel and quick, sharp turn-in that this motorcycle carries, but might be a little bit underwhelmed with the power. While the bike does not feel slow, it doesn't really feel fast either, and that might not be something that you want if you've ridden faster bikes. Now, not to take away from what a light, small displacement bike is capable of, but you might want a little more power if you do plan to do a lot of interstate riding. Now, I don't want to shy new riders away from this bike, because by all means you could start out riding on this bike, but I'd recommend you get a little bit of experience on something else, like maybe a Grom, for example. I've heard this called the Big Grom, and the handling characteristic really does reflect that. A Grom really just kind of falls into turns because it's so small and light, and the steering head angle is really conducive to that type of handling. But nonetheless, it is a very twitchy bike, and if you're a little on the clumsy side, it might not be for you. Now, let's move on to the scoring. In the daily category, we'll be rating the bike on comfort, reliability, maintenance, practicality, and price. Each section is worth 10 points each, leading to a total of 50 points for a perfect score. Comfort, this bike is not going to rate very high. The seat is kind of hard, though it is shaped well. The bars are very low, the seating position is very aggressive, but this is all intentional. If that's something that you can deal with, the bike is not uncomfortable for around town riding. Anything more than an hour though, and you're going to be having a hard time with your wrists and your back. Not as much weight or stress is placed on your wrists and back as something like a Super Sport does, but nonetheless, comfort, this bike receives a 4 out of 10. Now, onto reliability. I know that this bike is mechanically sound, as evidenced from the Duke 390, where this chassis and engine comes from, but I have seen some things online about ABS lights malfunctioning, possibly the ABS system, which I don't know where that's coming from. Any bike could have a fluke, any bike could have a lemon, right? It's very rare, but it does happen sometimes. The only other thing that I've seen about this bike, and I did experience it myself, it will flame out if you pop the throttle very aggressively from an idle. This is due to the extremely lean tune that the EPA requires to make this thing pass emissions. So you could fix this with a fueling dongle, but due to those few things, reliability gets a 7 out of 10. Moving on to maintenance, oil change intervals on this machine are at about 4,600 miles. Obviously your break-in service is at 600. This is not as bad as some machines are, some are better, but as a rule of thumb, as an experienced rider that rides his bike a little hard, I change my oil about every 3,000 miles, even though my service intervals are much higher than that. So for that, it's going to receive an 8 out of 10. Practicality is pretty good. It's a very good urban commuter. If you live in an area that's kind of tight, kind of congested, this is something you can kind of zip around on. Not too much power to be overwhelming, where you feel like you have to be overly gentle with the bike. You can kind of ring it out and just generally have a good time. It's agile, so for tight environments, it's great if you can get over the ergonomics of the bike, which again are not bad, just not going to be comfortable for more than about an hour. So if your commute is less than that, it's pretty practical. So for that, practicality gets a 7 out of 10. Now, moving on to price, this thing is a bargain. I don't think I'm ever going to review another bike that has the most bike for the least amount of money. These things retail at $62.99, and Husqvarna's put out a rebate for leftover models, and it gets you down even lower than that. And just to give you an example, my tester for this video was a pre-owned model. It's still a 2019. It had about 800 miles on it, and we're selling it for $39.88. That is so much bike, so much performance, so much style and cool factor for $4,000. And I don't really think that that's going to be beat by any bike anytime soon, so price gets a 10 out of 10. Expanding on a few of the things I mentioned earlier, having to do with price and how this might not be the best beginner bike for you. If you haven't ridden before, this would be a fantastic second, third, or even fourth bike for somebody who's looking to have a collection and have some unique bikes. And especially at this price, $4,000, I might even consider adding this to my garage. With that being said, let's move on to the performance category. Power. It's not the most powerful bike in the world, by any means, of course, but it doesn't really feel too slow either. It feels like it has enough power to get out of its own way, enough power to have fun with, but not so much to be overwhelming. Obviously, there's faster bikes, and there's definitely slower bikes, so power is going to receive a 6 out of 10. The brakes feel very solid. They're not too twitchy, but they're just enough for the weight of this machine and the way that it's designed. A larger, full-size Brembo brake would be too much, so that's why the bi-Brembo brakes were selected. Something bigger would be too overwhelming for this machine. The brakes are good, and the only reason it doesn't receive a perfect score is because I have been on bikes that have touchier, harder stopping brakes. Not that these are lacking in any way, but there's stuff out there that's twitchier, and twitchy's not always good, especially on a light bike like this, so braking is going to receive a 9 out of 10. Moving on to suspension, the WP suspension that's equipped on this bike is very good. Every WP system that I've ridden, and I have ridden a handful on and off-road, have been very good. I've never felt them to be lacking in any way. The only reason that these don't score higher is because they are non-adjustable, which you can't expect fully adjustable suspension on a bike this size in this price point. And for that reason, it receives an 8 out of 10. Now, not to detract, the suspension is really good. It's set up well for this bike. Bumps, especially hard bumps, getting on an on-ramp or something like that, is not going to rattle you to your core. You're going to feel it, but you do want stiff, tight, responsive, progressively damped suspension on this type of bike, and that's exactly what it is. Now, on to technology. The EMS and the ABS systems from Bosch, the fly-by-wire throttle, all of that is really good. Don't get me wrong. A bike that only has an LCD display is never going to score very high in the technology category. It's not that it really bothers me so much. I just know that a lot of people have been conditioned to have a much more comprehensive dash and a lot more visual technology. Now, while that's all fine and dandy, it's not for everybody, and the purpose of this bike was to decomplicate, and that's what it's done. But as a result, technology will receive a 5 out of 10. Now, for the final category of handling, this machine handles better than most bikes that are probably on the road right now. Obviously, something like a ZX10 or a 701 Supermoto, of course that's what I'm going to mention, is going to go around the track probably a lot faster than this bike would. Not because it's at a disadvantage for handling, just because it's down on power compared to those things. But the turn-in, the responsiveness, the direct steering feel on this bike is pretty much unparalleled, and for that it receives a 10 out of 10. Well, in conclusion, with a daily score totaling 36 out of 50 and a performance score totaling 38 out of 50, this bike receives a 74 out of 100. Now, for a bike in this price point, that is very, very respectable, and it's not to say anything negative about a bike. You can't look at these ratings as getting a C on a test. No bike is a 100. There is no such thing as a perfect bike. Every bike does things well and does things not so well, and this is just kind of a way to quantify that data. And that is everything that you need to know about the 2019 Husqvarna Vitpilen 401. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can tune in next time. I'll be posting videos every Wednesday. Share this video with your friends, your family, and your riding buddies. If it helped you out, please leave me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, ride safe out there.